It is June 29th. This is the PFF Forecast. We are going to talk Cam Newton. We're going to re-look at the AFC East because I think it begs re-looking at. And that's great because we get to push off our NFC East discussion to Thursday. So a jam-packed pod. I guess the only thing – my first thought and my first question to you, Eric, is like, how good did it feel to have a Sunday night where you were talking about football and your blood was pumping a little bit and you're like, oh man, like there's news breaking, there's things happening. I'm thinking about football on a Sunday night. It just felt right.
Yeah, it was great. And things have been kind of quiet. I don't want to jinx it, but things have been kind of quiet on the COVID-19, front for the last like 2-3 days. I mean, I don't know. How a day is like 48 hours long now, man. So like, I don't even know my sense of time. But yeah, yesterday was kind of fun to think about, the AFC East, the division that we had as like the tightest division, in our last simulation, a little bit wider now. But thinking about how, the New England Patriots are going to compete this year.
I was thinking about, there was a lot of discussion on Twitter about, someone said that this would never happen. They're rolling with Jared Stidham, all this stuff. And it was almost this kind of weird war. And I was trying to think about where I was at with Cam Newton possibly going to New England, because this is not like a new concept. And I remember thinking to myself, Cam Newton, and I may have said this on the podcast, but Cam Newton is a very in-your-face social media presence. Like his Instagram, he's on there a lot. He's showing you what he's doing. He's outspoken. He obviously dresses that way. I personally think his style is pretty awesome. I wish I could pull it off. But like it's very different than the New England thing. And as I did a little more research, and I talked to a guy who was one of the strength coaches in Carolina when Cam was there, our buddy named Mario Pilato, who's actually going to be doing some writing for us this year. And I was like, just tell me about Cam Newton. And he's like, dude, he's like one of the hardest working guys I've ever been around. The dude just grinds, and he's really competitive, and he's an incredibly hard worker. And you think about Tom Brady, and you go, you know what? Tom Brady actually has kind of a outward social media account and is also a really hard worker. And like, he has some interesting fashion decisions as well. And you start thinking about it, I'm like, you know what? This should not surprise anyone. Like, he's a really good football player when he's healthy. That none of these other things are that weird for the Patriots or Bill Belichick.
No, I mean, the thing is, we've talked about, when it came to, the Shanahan-Garoppolo, relationship, the LaFleur-Rodgers relationship, Brady isn't Brady evolved into the kind of person that was sort of, quote unquote, his own guy, right? And Belichick, work within that framework. I think the combination of being unsigned until now, the combination of, an offseason where Nick Foles got a starting job basically before him, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Teddy Bridgewater. I think that Cam is going to be a little bit humbled, but he's also, that kind of personality where, I don't mean this in a bad way, but he's a front runner. He's like a guy who, when you get the positive correlations going, right, like that, they compound. And I think it's a perfect situation for the Patriots because, if things go bad with him, they'll just tank, similar to how Detroit did last year when their quarterback, didn't work out after, 6-7 games. If he goes well, this is a really easy division. And aside from the Ravens and the Chiefs, a really easy conference.
You mentioned the front runner thing, and Cam Newton, people seem to have downplayed how ridiculous of an athlete Cam Newton is. He's almost the LeBron of football. And now he hasn't had quite the same, obviously the same injury luck that LeBron has. But like, as far as being a superhuman athlete at that position, he is. And when you are that athletic, you almost get this, you can front run because you're just better. So you're always out ahead, right? And then you just keep it steamrolling. And he's never really had to be in a situation where he's where he's like, man, my mechanics really matter. And I wonder if this is the perfect situation where he has dealt with this recovery, and we'll talk about the Liz Frank injury here in a second, but he's dealt with this really long recovery. Average time is like 10 to 12 months. He's had to grit through that. He's been let go by the fucking Carolina Panthers for Teddy Bridgewater. I mean, that's, as you mentioned, humbling. And now he comes into a place where everyone in New England has a little chip on their shoulder. And if they're rowing in the same direction and he goes, you know what, I'm going to prioritize the little things. Not that he didn't, but there were things that he could just get away with that he didn't need to worry about, that now, because he has to think about them, it'll make him a better player. And I'm just so interested to see what this looks like, because the injury question is real. And so the Liz Frank injury, you can do more research on it, but essentially it's a separation of two things that should be connected in your foot that aren't. And this is what Hollywood Brown had. You put a screw in there, and that is something that is not – it's not like you recover and you're just 100% again from all of the research that I've done. And I asked a couple different people about this. So he's going to be a different Cam Newton. And I'm curious what your thoughts are as far as, like, if he's 100% healthy, if he's fully recovered, which means he's probably still not the same Cam he was before, but at least he's healthy. What does that look like for the Patriots offense?
Here's my thing with him, though. I mean, and I guess I'm looking back, so I'm trying to look at, at least 2018, I do think you get the Cam Newton that you might get here. Because, it was a Norv Turner's offense. They did a really good job of throwing underneath, crossers, throws to running backs. And during that time, I mean, he's still just, like, as far as accuracy, just sometimes just not good enough, right? Like, he was, among quarterbacks with 100 attempts or more, he's 42nd in terms of, like, passes we deemed as accurate plus, right? In terms of passes we deemed, accurate, it's, where is he here? I mean, he's 46th. So, like,
but that season. So I wanted to talk about the 2018 season, though, because he got injured halfway through that season.
He did.
And so, like, if you look at the first 9 weeks of that season, I want to say he got injured week 8. I might be wrong here, but I believe it was like smack dab.
We bet on them against the Ravens when he had come down with the injury, and they ended up winning, not only against the spread, but like outright. And then it deteriorated down the stretch. It
got way worse, but he was the 9th highest graded quarterback through week 9 of that season. And I don't know. I have always thought that the best version of Cam Newton is throwing the ball down the field and then obviously being to run, the football and get creative with things. The short passing game for a guy that just generally is not that accurate doesn't seem like the best move.
But they don't have receivers that can separate downfield. That's the problem. Like the reason that I put up 2018 is because it paints Cam Newton in the brightest light since his MVP season. So in 2015, he completed almost 60% of his passes. He averaged.
But was throwing the ball like 11 yards down.
Yeah, he averaged 7.8 yards per attempt, which is funny. That was the second best mark of his career. His first two yards per attempt, he was 7.8 as a rookie, 8.0 as a sophomore, and then 7.8 during his MVP year. And then it was 6.9, 6.7 in the 2017 season where he took the Panthers to 11-5, but was not accurate, right? And then in 18, he completed almost 68% of his passes. So my thought was, okay, they built an offense around him where they were getting completions, and 7.2 yards per pass attempt, which is a nice bump in that direction. But even in that system that accentuated completing passes and easier throws for him, he wasn't as accurate necessarily as his peers. And I wonder, okay, so the foot injury is a thing, right? In the first 2 games of last season, he had negative rushing yards, which is just not using what he's good at. One of the things he's good at. He's great at a lot of things. And then, his shoulder was a problem the year prior. And I get that his foot being good might make his foot being hurt might make his shoulder better, just by rest. But there's a lot of question marks here, and it's why when we talk about the AFC East race, I do think this puts the Patriots as favorites. but not overwhelmingly so.
Yeah, well, it's interesting picking out a couple more of these sort of anomalous components of the 2015 season on throws 20-plus yards downfield. And this was interesting because he had no Kelvin Benjamin. His most targeted receiver in 2015 was Ted Ginn, right? And Greg Olsen was the tight end. He was the most targeted guy overall. But from a receiving standpoint, a wide receiver was Ted Ginn. Almost 50% of his deep throws, 20-plus yards downfield, were on target, just 49%, which was the by far the highest over the next 5 years. It went to 34, 34, 38, and 30 in those two games in 2019. So, there were some things that generally are unstable that he was on the right side of variance in that year. So for me to say, oh, he can get back to that level, the answer would be no. The question, though, is do you need him to get back to that level? I would argue that Cam Newton at 75% is the best, 75% of his old self, meaning he's healthy, but he's just not 100% of what he used to be, is the best quarterback in the AFC East. And now he's on a team that, yes, they don't have the best offense, but they have an incredible coaching staff. They have an incredible set of defensive playmakers. I don't see how this isn't the best team in the AFC East.
Yeah, I guess my thought is always sort of, grading the Patriots on the curve that they've been graded on for the past 20 seasons, which is, last season, I thought Brady was obviously the best quarterback in the division and overwhelmingly so, but with a decline in his play and with the decline in play of those around him, you step back a second and they weren't contenders in the AFC,
Mm-hmm.
And if they get a defensive regression, they lose Van Noy, they lose Jamie Collins, they lose Deron Harmon. If they get a defensive regression at all, then there's going to be a lot of pressure on Cam. My biggest worry is I think, Cam Newton's already underrated, and there's going to be a situation where, his support isn't good enough for him to be all that great. And he's in a position to fail from the perspective of his defense isn't giving him short fields and, the leads that, that Tom Brady was bestowed last year at times. And Newton just doesn't look good, and or at least not up to expectations. And I think that's a legitimate fear, even in an AFC and an AFC East that's weak.
Yeah, I mean, I think if he's on the field, I don't see him taking another chance coming back where he's not fully healthy, because that to me was the real issue, right? So if he's on the field week 1, you've got to think that he's ready to go. And I know the playmakers are not good, but Julian Edelman was also banged up last year. If he can just be that guy that is always able to kind of get open from the slot, you hope that he's a guy that can get 130 targets. And then you look elsewhere and you look at all of the other guys on that, and it's man, are they just going to run the ball a ton? And is one of the appeals of Cam Newton that he's going to be this power back in the backfield? Because I'm looking at this right now. I think he's had over 100 rushing attempts every season except 2016 when he had 94, and then obviously 2019. Is he getting 100 rushing attempts this year?
I don't know, because and you talked about he's not taking chances, but he didn't take an injury chance last year. He got hurt in the preseason, an ankle injury running the football in the preseason. And that's really what hurt him, right? It wasn't any residual effects of his shoulder from the previous year.
It was all foot stuff, yeah.
And granted, there's just a lot of questions because I think we haven't fully unpacked all the impacts that Brady had protecting the offensive line, for example. Is James White any good when he doesn't have somebody like Brady throwing passes, that are accurate enough for him to get yards after the catch at an alarming rate? There's just a lot. I like Cam Newton. I think that it was absurd that he was, it took this long for him to be signed. And I don't like the rest of the AFC East, but I think if you're still on that contrarian train of liking the Jets or the Dolphins, this doesn't push me off of it very much. All it does is it calls into considerable question, were the Bills the favorites? And the answer is no. Like that's all this really did for me, is to say, look, like the Patriots have a weaker roster, but they're still like way better at the quarterback position than the Bills.
Well, that was going to be my question. So do you right now, if I said pick one quarterback, that you want to bet on in this division, it's still Cam Newton, right? I mean, you're not going to take Ryan Fitzpatrick over him, are you?
I mean, given the odds, I'll take Fitzpatrick. But yeah, I mean, there's not a let me look at here the futures here if they put them back up.
So the Jets are
they're even basically, right? So the Dolphins are 7-1 on Bet Online.
Yep.
To win the division. The Jets are 8-1, and the Bills and Patriots are both plus 130. I think both the Bills and the Patriots are too flawed to consider at that price. And I think the Dolphins and the Jets are going to be a lot closer than people realize. Newton. Look. He hasn't even played, like, again, and this is the other thing with like the Colts and the Panthers and the Bears. It's like we're also in the middle of a pandemic where like Newton hasn't been practicing with N'Keal Harry.
Is that a good thing or?
Well, I mean, he's going to be on the field.
Is it helpful to practice with N'Keal Harry?
He's going to be on the field. Well, you have to know how to throw to a slow receiver. And I mean, and unless Cam wants to call me and I'll like simulate for that for him, he's got to at least like know how fast or not
if he
fast
just
N'Keal
pretends
Harry is.
If he just pretends that N'Keal Harry is Greg Olsen, though, he'll be fine because they're probably about the same speed. I agree with you though, and I was trying to think about how I might change the way that I've bet this division. So before this, had bet two things. I had bet New England under 9 wins very early on, and I had bet the Dolphins to win the division. And I believe I bet that I think both them and the Jets were 8-1. I want to say I may be misremembering there,
but that's really moved. Then the Pats. I mean, have you looked at this win total since?
Right. Yeah, it has. It's moved a considerable amount.
Not the actual number, but the price for sure has.
Because now it's over is minus 125.
130 is what I see, and then under is even money.
Yeah,
I can't argue with that, given that if the rest of the division stinks as much as we think it's going to, then somebody's got to win those games.
Is there a part of this though that hurts the Bills more than it hurts the other two teams? So, and this is a
yes.
You're thinking about it and you go, okay, the Bills they had this kind of decided advantage, in their minds, and now it's like, we're now the pseudo favorite playing against a team that's won every other single year that now has a chip on their shoulder, and they have a real quarterback now. And then the other two teams, it's still like no one cares about us, like no one thinks about us anyways. It doesn't matter that Cam Newton's a Patriot. Still, people have completely forgotten us. So now there's all this pressure on the Bills. It hurts them a little bit more in my mind than it hurts the Dolphins and the Jets.
Yeah, I mean, that for them it's just pennies at that point. Like, because was there ever a situation? I mean, the Patriots have to be bad for them to win the division, I think. And like, I still think the probability of them being extremely bad, it's lower now, but there's still a significant number of cases where that's the case,
Yeah.
Newton gets hurt or Newton plays poorly. If he goes 2016 on it where he completes only 53% of his passes, at 6.9 yards pass attempt, like, it's not really going to matter, is it? Like, it's.
No, I am right there with you. So you reran our simulations last night with Newton in there, and the interesting thing about Newton, right, is we talked about this a little bit. He had that really good 2015. There was kind of a pretty sharp like downturn from that point on. Played a little bit better at the start of 2018, but overall in 2018 it was not pretty because of the injury, and like it got really ugly towards the end of the season. And then obviously 2019 was really ugly. So we have this view of Cam Newton, which is like super Cam 2015. The guy's an athletic freak of nature, and that should help him recover to a certain degree.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it also clouds our vision of, he really did not play that well. If he has to be more of a passer, that's been a place where it has been a weakness. Not saying that he can't, make some changes there, but like that's not something you should be just relying on. And if all of a sudden he's not going to be able to run the ball effectively, 100 plus times, like in 2015, I think Seth Galina tweeted this out. He picked up a first down on like 42% of his rushes. So it's insane. Like the guy was just automatic when he was carrying the football, and it was really kind of just once he got injured, never the same. So right now the Patriots 36% to win the division, the Bills 28%, the Dolphins 19%, and the Jets 17%. We just talked about what their odds are right now. The one that really sticks out to me is the Dolphins at 19% with implied odds in the market at just under 13. So I think I'm pretty happy with the fact that I bet them. I also went in yesterday, and I couldn't believe I found this, but I got Cam MVP at 80-1. So I'm actually
You're sitting pretty.
I should be wearing a Cam Newton Patriots jersey right now because I am a huge Cam Newton.
They win the
MVP.
division without him winning MVP. Yes, but those are partially correlated. We have what I still think under 9 at the current price plus 100 is a good bet.
Yes, that was what surprised me. So this was another reaction I had. I went through a lot of emotions last night, by the way.
You're a glass case of emotions.
I was. It's Sunday night. You have the Sunday scaries. Every Sunday night, I'm like,
what are the Sunday scaries? I don't understand what the Sunday scaries mean.
The Sunday scaries are you have all of this. Well, for me, I'll tell you what my Sunday scaries are. My Sunday scaries are I have a really long to-do list, and I always am more ambitious. And I think I can get like 15 things done in a weekend. And so Sunday night, I sit there like Sunday afternoon. I go, okay, here's where I'm at. Be honest with myself. Here's the one thing I've got to get done, before the night's over. So I'm sitting down. I've got a glass of wine. I'm doing that. And then the Cam Newton news breaks. And I'm like, oh, fuck, man. I'm so screwed now. Like, there's no way I'm getting this done. So those are my Sunday scaries. But I also said another part of that was that I looked at it. I was like, okay, I have the Patriots under, I have a decent chunk of change on that. And now I'm worried about it. But, man, that's still a high number. Like, it's more about the division as a whole, really, and them not being a great division and the best roster in this division having a below-average quarterback. And that's why the Patriots are the favorite. It's not necessarily that they're going to win 10 games.
Yeah, I'm looking at the bets that I've made. I have New England to miss the playoffs at plus 150. New England to miss the playoffs at plus 140. Missed the playoffs at plus 137. So I really went in here. We've been negative on Carolina the last 2 years, right? I mean, like I said, I like Cam, but I think I tweeted this out yesterday. I think everybody's wrong about him. The people who think he's a bum are wrong, but the people who think he's this he's still the MVP of the league, I think, are wrong. You look at, New England has, they were at 9.5 under for a while. Still think, that's, I think, a pretty damn good bet still.
I got them at 9.5 multiple times.
Yeah, we'll obviously be eating crow if, Newton ends up playing really well. It's time, it's time to pay that up. But, I'm fairly confident here. I still think there's an edge to be had on them. I'm fading New England this year.
Is there a couple of different questions I'm curious your thoughts on. Is there because I agree with your everyone is wrong on Cam Newton take, and it's hip. Right now, it's very hip to be pro Cam Newton. So I get that. I'm all aboard. I'm really excited to see his wardrobes again in comparison and contrast to Bill Belichick. I think it'd be really funny. They should have some fun with it. Because deep down, Bill Belichick, like he gets it. Mm-hmm. If they did just a wardrobe swap for week 1, or if they're just running through the league and like week 17 they do it, like I think that would just be so fun. But I was looking at this because I was kind of trying to think about how I view Cam Newton relative to some other quarterbacks. And since 2014, he has the third highest percentage of positively graded dropbacks. and the highest percent of negatively graded dropbacks from a clean pocket. And that, you know who that reminded me of is Jameis Winston.
I thought you were going to say Josh Allen without the positivity.
No. It's very Jameis Winston-esque, right? Like, he makes some really nice throws. He makes some, like, dude, you just overthrew a running back that was 5 yards away from you plays.
Right.
And I wonder if, like, I would take a chance on Jameis Winston. Why would I not take a chance on Cam Newton? And I really think for me, it's all about the injury component. Like, if he can come back.
Jameis has mostly been healthy.
Yeah, which, is a good or a bad thing. But to me, that was one of the things I thought of. It's like, who would you compare Cam to from just a performance standpoint? Like, what you're getting on the field?
I'm trying to think, like, of a quarterback from, like, I feel like he's more of a back in the day guy, don't you think?
I think so.
Like,
well, I rely on you for those things.
Like Dante Culpepper.
Okay, I like that.
Big, fat. Culpepper had like 10 rushing touchdowns one year, but he also had the turnovers. He also, I remember 2005, they traded Randy Moss in the first 2 games of the year. He had 8 turnovers and no touchdowns,
Mm-hmm.
Dante was a little bit more accurate, but, one year he had 23 interceptions and like 23 fumbles or something like that. So there was certainly some warts there. But capable of MVP play. Dante would have been, MVP in 2004 had it not been for Peyton Manning setting the record for touchdown passes in the season. But no, I mean, he's a player that I think would probably have done better back then, although it was easier to hit the quarterback. Maybe he would have gotten more injured. But, nowadays, like, we prefer, efficient passers who get it done underneath, and Cam's more of a, vertical passing game guy. And so, I would, Newton's a good, Winston's a good one. Although I think Winston's pretty good underneath too. Like, he's obviously a lot better version of Josh Allen, but that's sort of what the Bills hope he'll be. But yeah, I think he's a quarterback who maybe the league has passed by in some ways.
Interesting. Because I could also see, and this is just like, this is the easy thing to say, but it was successful last year. And obviously he's not Lamar Jackson, but what the Ravens did with a quarterback that is not particularly accurate, leveraging the running game, the ability to gain, to be a really plus EV team on the ground when the running back is running it. And the key to that, to me, would be, can Cam Newton avoid tackles and huge hits in the way that Lamar Jackson can? And I'm not sure that's the case.
That's the thing with Lamar. He just doesn't take hits. Like, he avoids them, whereas Newton sort of almost invites them.
Well, because he's huge. He's like he's like, each of his legs is a Lamar Jackson.
He did run a 4.5 going into was it Florida State at first, and then it was University of Florida. I'm sorry. And
Dude, he's an insane athlete.
Crazy athlete. The thing with Lamar is that, like, Lamar runs away from people, whereas Newton, I think the speed is there for sure, but it's a different type of speed. It's
I'm going to truck you elusiveness instead of you're going to miss the tackle. Yeah.
Versus Jamal, Lamar Jackson's sort of more of a Jamal Charles, and which they both are good, and it's it just depends which will stay healthy. Although Charles was hurt a lot as Chief, but yeah.
Another question I have for you. I found this to be interesting. On Bet Online, the odds for Week 1 starter for the Patriots, Cam Newton is just minus 125. Jarrett Stidham is plus 110. Is this a trap? What is this?
Well, first off, our colleague Kevin Cole, always points this out, which I think is smart, is the limits are low.
Sure.
So what they're trying to get you to do there is to bet on it, win it, and then roll it over for like that silly second Monday Night Football game of opening weekend, where like you're fading the Raiders, and they're going to put together one really good performance at the beginning of the year and steal your money from you, right? The Raiders are actually in Carolina opening day, but anyway, so that's one thing. I think another thing which is real, and this might be something to talk about, and we'll maybe have Jason or Brad on. There's a really good chance that a lot of veterans get cut in August.
Mhm.
Because if there's news that there's going to be a smaller salary cap in 2021 and beyond, the time to get out from some veterans is now, right?
Mhm.
Because if you cut rookies, you're going to, or you want to put them on the practice squad or whatever, like there's that inherent risk that they're going to slide through. And then the other thing is so a veteran one time in his career is, if he is on the roster week one time during his career, if he's cut, he can take the rest of that salary fully guaranteed. So that's why, for a couple of years ago, that's why like the Chiefs cut CJ Spiller like 3 hours before the opening game and then signed him back, Friday night after, right?
Mhm.
Because then they don't have to guarantee him his salary the whole year. Like I think if Newton shows up to training camp and is shaky at all, like the Patriots might just cut bait, because then they can save some money, and use it on younger players or whatever, or anything that they want to do there.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because, I mean, obviously we're super late in the process, and I think the immediate reaction to that is, okay, well, it took some time for the doctors, the Patriots doctors, to evaluate him, obviously, and there's a ton of question marks around the injury and all that stuff. But the part of it is also, maybe they just weren't sure, and like maybe they were looking at other options, and this is not as much of a galaxy brain, well thought out plan where the Patriots were lying in wait and pounced and got, this tremendous bargain, but more of a, they were fine with Jared Stidham, and then, they got some good reports on Cam Newton and they had some good conversations. Like, okay, well, we might as well give this a shot, but it's not something where they've been tied to him mentally for a really long time. Yeah. And that they might, they might say, hey, this is just an experiment, and we actually still do like Jared Stidham. But and this is, look, Jared Stidham is not good enough to be in this class of quarterback. But if you have a question mark at quarterback, you should be bringing in Cam Newton to compete with him. I was talking about this with some Broncos people this past week. Like, if you have Drew Lock, you should be bringing in Cam Newton to try and take the job. If you have Mitch Trubisky, you should be bringing in Cam Newton to try and take the job. That doesn't mean the other guy can't win it. Now, Jared Stidham is not those guys, not even that good. But, like, maybe that's how they view it. They actually still think highly of him.
Yeah. And
I can't believe I just said that. I feel like an idiot.
No, I mean, but here's the thing. The Patriots are never desperate.
True.
They're never desperate. I mean, they did trade for Mohamed Sanu, but what did they do? Well, they knew that they could fleece the Chargers for a second-round pick, right? So, even then, they always sort of have an out. In this case, yeah, Newton would be great, but like they didn't need, I'm fully still on the the idea that they are open to tanking.
Yeah, you won't let that one go.
I don't mean this. I don't mean to put these players in the same category, although they're both top 5 picks overall. But like it's like when the Colts, when Manning was hurt in 2011. And they signed somebody like Kerry Collins, and it's like, well, Kerry Collins just took the Titans to 13-3 in the first round bye in the playoffs for Tennessee. Like, he's a veteran, and if he works out, great. If he doesn't, this is already kind of a lost season. I kind of think that's how New England views this. It's not, Cam Newton's a lot better than Kerry Collins, but it's sort of that idea.
Yeah, that's a good comparison, actually.
Yeah, because if he comes in and stabilizes things, but they're bad offensively. There's not a lot going on there.
There isn't, and that's why the variance in this is so high. Like, if he can come back and just remain healthy and can run the ball, like Tom Brady was a negative in that respect. So it was all about the fact that his receivers couldn't get open is magnified when a quarterback is just going to put the ball on you, and you're going to have to be in charge of getting a step of separation so you can do something and you can catch the ball and gain some yardage. If all of a sudden that's not, because that's never been the most important part of Cam Newton's game, it's always the fact that he's just an athlete that you can't match up with. That might really help a team that doesn't have a receiver that can get open on the outside. So like if he can't run the ball, it will look awful. Because if Tom Brady can't complete passes to these receivers, then Cam Newton's probably going to struggle. But if Cam Newton can run the ball even a little bit, it could all of a sudden make this – people might be going, I can't believe they look so bad with Tom Brady. Look at what they're doing with Cam Newton. And it's all because the quarterback running game is all of a sudden a part of that offense where it was just literally not there.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I mean, there's an out there, right? Like Brady, when his receivers run open, basically had to throw them open, you know?
Right.
And Newton can't do that. But he can take off and escape, and he can buy time in the pocket, and he can avoid sacks in a way that's better than Brady. And that's really what they're going to have to lean on.
Yeah. No, it's going to be so interesting to see what that offense looks like week 1. And I wonder if even what it looks like week 1, 2, 3, and 4 is because of the quarantine and everything, the pandemic. Well, it may not look anything like it does week 16 and 17, you know, and if they manage to make the playoffs, like what that looks like.
I mean, let's look at this early season schedule, because this is really going to be, I think, what determines, you know, the fate of the Patriots. Home to the Dolphins, right? We don't know what the Dolphins are, but they are, you know, a touch. And the spread of that game didn't really move yesterday, by the way. It was like 6.5, and I think it stayed there. Let me make sure that I'm not lying. But when I looked to go and see, because if it had moved a point or two, I was going to bet the Dolphins.
The Dolphins? I can't see it moving. There's so much uncertainty with that. I just don't see them getting more than a touchdown.
Especially given that we're not exactly sure what home field advantage is.
Right. And it's still warm. Like all of those things,
I think.
They took
it down off of Bet Online. Let me see if they have it on Pinnacle or something. But in any event, that game is anything but a sure game. Then they go to Seattle. The Patriots have lost their last 2 games against Russell Wilson with Tom Brady.
Yep.
That one's not going to be a cakewalk. Then they're home to the Las Vegas Raiders, which there's a good. I don't mean to be a jerk here, but like Derek Carr has the potential to outduel Cam Newton. Mm-hmm. And then they go to Kansas City, right? So you're talking probably at best a 2-2 start there. Then they're home to the Broncos, who we all kind of like. And then they host the San Francisco 49ers before facing the Bills. Those first 7 games, if the Patriots come out of that 4-3, they're probably pretty fortunate.
Oh, you're stoked.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's also one of those schedules where, you know, far be it from us to know how all those teams are going to start, but it's one of those schedules where if all those teams are still kind of figuring things out, you know, and the Patriots are just lagging behind a little bit, you know, and they all of a sudden have a really bad start to the season, and then people just abandon ship. I could easily see the Patriots making up for that in the second half of the season when they figure things out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's tricky, and even after that they have, you know, the Jets, but then Ravens, Texans, Cardinals are going to be an improved team.
Wow.
Like they finish relatively easy. You go at Rams, Dolphins, Bills, Jets, which isn't the worst thing in the world, but as far as schedules, they haven't had this difficult of a schedule in a while, and that to me, if they start out slow, it's a very Detroit Lions type of situation in my estimation. Again, I'm only guessing here what the motivations are, but I can't imagine Belichick would waste an opportunity for Lawrence or Fields or Trey Lance just because he wants to eke out some value on a Cam Newton 1-year deal.
That's fair. All righty. This was fun. I'm glad we had some news to talk about in the middle of the offseason.
Right. We'll push off this. Hey, look, NFL, if you want to give us some more news, we'll take some more news.
Yeah, we'll take it.
We'll keep pushing the NFC East off a little bit because I really don't want to talk about why our projections hate the Eagles. So,
I'm excited to talk about that. That'll be, God willing.
You got some miles? Give us some miles.
I haven't watched Wedding Crashers in far too long. So that'll be on Thursday. Working on a guest for that. And Quibi will make a triumphant return. Once again, I've been prepping some shows for them. So hopefully we'll get Katzenberg on the line at some point. We can get some of that marketing spend. Anyways, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys on Thursday. Peace out.